Agitorium nostrum in nomine Domini.
Immortale
Immortale Dei. Who wrote it? What year?
18.
You find it on the very last paragraph.
1885.
Yes, we're on page 20 on the bottom at the dash. In fact, take it please, Tony. In fact,
in that Constitution of the Republic which we spoke of before, there are indeed divine and human shares in a suitable order. The rights of citizens are unharmed, and the same of the divine, of natural, and of human things are defended by the protection of the laws. The description of each office, when wisely established, then have a protection fittingly ordained. Every man in this doubtful and laborious course to that eternal city knows that he has at ready leaders whom he may safely follow in entering and helpers for reaching it. And they equally understand that some are given to them either to establish or to preserve security, luck, or other advantages on which this common life is based. Domestic society gains an equal stability from the holiness of the one and indivisible wedlock. The rights and duties between spouses are ruled by a surrounding justice and equity. A due glory is preserved for woman. The authority of the man is conformed to the example of the authority of God. Fatherly power is worthily tempered for the dignity of wife and children. Finally, the protection, advantages, and instruction of children is best assured. In this political and civil type of republic, the laws look to the common good. They are directed not to the will and fallacious judgment of the multitude, but to truth and justice. The human authority of princes puts on a certain higher sanctity, and is kept lest it decline away from justice, and not leap over its limit in ruling. The obedience of the citizens has honesty and dignity as a companion, for it is not the service of a man to a man, but obedience to the will of God, exercising royal power through men. Being acquainted with and persuaded by this, it is understood that these things entirely relate to justice. To revere the majesty of princes, to be firmly and faithfully subject to public power, to do nothing seditiously, to preserve the holy teaching of the state. Similarly, a mutual charity, kindness, and liberality is placed among duties.
okay, what's liberality? What's another word?
Selflessness.
What's another common word?
Generosity.
Generosity, yes. Charity, kindness, and generosity is placed among duties. Go on.
The same citizen and Christian is not pulled apart into contrary parts, precepts fighting among themselves. Finally, everyone seeks for the community and civil society the greatest goods by which the Christian religion fulfills, out of her own will, the mortal life of men. Thus, it appears to be most truly said, quote, "The state of the republic hangs from religion, by which God is worshipped, and much knowledge and intimacy falls between one and the other," end quote.
Yes, so he's quoting St. Cyril of Alexandria. So yes, I think if you or I, we could step into a Catholic society that truly was a Catholic state, good Catholic clergy, we would probably say this is the closest thing to heaven. Because there would be such order, such peace, such kindness, honesty between people.
We start bawling.
We'd say, how in the world did we fall for the lies of these Thomas Hobbes and John Locke and Rousseau, who are the think tanks behind the modern governments? And the idea that all authority comes
From the people.
from the people, by the people, for the people. It's all a lie. It's all a fallacy. And it's a heresy, by the way, too, isn't it?
Yep.
It's a heresy to say all authority comes from the people. So we have a whole Western world built on heresy. And no wonder it's messed up. No wonder we're killing our babies and the children are messed up. Poor people, poor souls, you know. And the popes were, they were shouting at the leaders, stay Catholic, don't fall for these lies, tear the mask off the Freemasons, says Pope Leo XIII. In which encyclical? We haven't done that one yet with you. We did it last year that was our first encyclical with Gavril and Guadalupe. Humanum genus, tear the mask off, he tells the bishops. Tear the mask off. Let them see the Freemasonic lodges for what they really are. Subversive, conspiratorial, always seeding sedition. If we could step back for 3 days into a Catholic society, we'd be shocked. You would see the youth, the children happy. You would see tons of children everywhere. Even in the 50s, the older people in our town used to say there was always, we grew up that way too, the children playing in the streets. Playing ball, playing baseball, playing rollerblade hockey. That was just normal. Today, you don't see that anymore, very rarely. And you would see college students, high school students with healthy eyes and not depressed, pale from staying up all night playing video games, not depleted and sick from pornography, and not messed up and dressed like a bunch of kids wearing, ripped up clothes and baggy garbage. Women would be dressed as women with a proper dress and modest. And that's even in the 40s, they were already starting to corrupt the women's dress with the dresses up to the knee, which was considered extremely scandalous. Now you can hardly find a woman that dresses even partially modest. Yeah.
I think someone brought up this point, it might have been Andrew, but people think that with the American Revolution, that the founding fathers, they built the best working society. Like that's what people think, that the American culture, they set up the best working society. Yet, if you look at all of history, we're the youngest society ever, and we are already collapsing.
Yes.
And we've started collapsing, like you said, even before the 40s.
That's right.
It's less than 200 years.
Less than 200 years,
Yeah.
we're already nosediving.
Right.
Crash landing. That's true. Because it can't hold without the Catholic Church, without the true religion, without Christ the King. But how many centuries did, France last? Basically from St. Lazarus, who was raised from the dead by Christ, until the 1789. And even then, there was still much good Catholicism after that, with Cardinal Pio Portier, and then St. Peter Julian Aymard, St. John Vianney. There was still even aftershocks of saints after. St. Vincent de Paul, Our Lady appears to Lourdes. Who'd she appear to at Lourdes?
St. Bernadette.
Who'd she appear to at Rue des Bacs? The Miraculous Medal. Saint Catherine Labouré, her body's incorrupt. So, and the prophecies do say that there will rise a great monarch out of France. And Mary Julie Jeheny mentions this. France will finally be saved by a good monarch who's of the bloodline of Louis XVI. And someone told me that Freemasons appeared with, suit and ties to Mary Julie Jeheny's house to ask her, where does this promised monarch live? Do you know the address? Do you know the name? Because they wanted to kill him before any chance of the return of France to Catholicism. So, the founding fathers, they didn't want Christ the King. So we're crashing fast. And a sign that a society is already gone and lost its balance is abortion. And then sodomy is the end of it. Sodomy is just It's just a matter of time before God destroys it, completely destroys it. What a mess. And now, Rome allowing the church, conciliar church, praising these sodomites, letting them come into St. Peter's as an honorable parade. That's, if nothing else could wake people up out of that conciliar church, that should. But most people say, we have to be nice, we have to be understanding. Jesus was merciful, Jesus loved everybody. Yeah, he did, but he also told them, you stand in danger of hellfire. Who does not believe will be condemned. Read on, Anthony, son of Celso.
Augustine marvelously followed up on the strength of these good things, as he was accustomed to do, especially when he brings up the Catholic Church in these words. Quote, "You train and teach children childishly, young men with strength, old men with quiet, exactly as the age of their bodies, so also their soul. You place women in chaste and faithful obedience to their husbands, not for satisfying their wantonness, but for the propagation of children and for the society of the family. You put men in charge of their wives, not for mocking the weaker sex, but for the laws of a sincere love. You submit children to their parents in a certain free servitude. You place parents over children in an upright mastery. You join together citizens to citizens, nations to nations, and, in short, men, by the memory of their first parents, not only in society, but even in a certain brotherhood. You teach kings to provide for the peoples. You warn peoples to submit themselves to kings."
Okay, who's he talking to? Who's this you?
Our Lord.
No. He's talking about the Catholic Church. This is the glorious things you do. You teach children childishly, meaning at their level. You teach them the faith at, ABCs. Young men with strength, old men with quiet, exactly at the age of their bodies, so also their souls. So you train them, you teach them, you have compassion on them. So this is a whole list of the glory of the church's work with people at every level, every age. And marriage is sacred. Men are not to stomp on their wives like a doormat, but cherish them. But wives are not to be these hardened, calloused feminists yelling at their husbands and trying to boss the house around. No, she's to be submissive to her husbands. Ooh, does that hurt feminists when they hear that? Does that sting? But they got to learn submission and obedience to their husbands. And husbands can't be jerks either and, walk around the house like there's some royal tyrant yelling at their wives, humiliating her. That's not the way to treat a wife, right? But the modern world is so twisted that people don't even know what it is to be balanced anymore, because we're all imbalanced. Everything's out of balance. But here's St. Augustine praising the work of the Catholic Church. It's beautiful. It's beautiful. Why don't you start over again, Anthony, loud and clear. You train and teach children at the children's level, childishly, meaning, young men with strength, go on.
Old men with quiet, exactly as the age of their bodies, so also their soul. You place women in chaste and faithful obedience to their husbands, not for satisfying their wantonness, but for the propagation of children and for the society of the family.
Yeah, so what's marriage for? Children. Children and their upbringing. Children, and their upbringing. It's hard work.
Father, what's wantonness?
Wantonness is one's caprice, one's whims, following one's whims, without rule or restraint. Go on. You put men in charge of their wives. Ooh, the feminists don't like that.
Not for mocking the weaker sex, but for the laws of a sincere love.
Yes. So this is the men. You're in charge of your wives, but not to stomp on them, but to elevate, honor, and love them and cherish them, right? That's Catholic. That's Catholic. And men should open the door for their wives. They should bring them flowers often. They should kiss them often in public and in front of their children in a modest and chaste way, but sincere affection and not fake. Children need to see that. See how sound this is? See how beautiful this is? Go on.
You submit children to their parents in a certain free servitude. You place parents over children in an upright mastery. You join together citizens to citizens, nations to nations, and, in short, men by the memory of their first parents, not only in society, but even in a certain brotherhood.
Yeah, so what other empire, what other religion has ever done this? Join nations to be at peace with other nations. And join them in a high supranational unity. So you can go to Vietnam, you can go to France, you can go to South America and Chile, meet traditional Catholics who have the same faith, same Mass, and it's like talking to a friend. So we have what unites us in the mystical body of Christ, which is higher than national boundaries, you see? You follow?
Yes, and that's why the church should be in Latin across the board.
Absolutely.
No matter where you go in the world, the Mass should be exactly the same.
And I met old veterans. Father, when I was in Vietnam at the Vietnam War, I went into the town to find a Mass. I saw the priest was vesting, there was no altar boy, I asked if I could serve. I couldn't speak Vietnamese, but once he started the Mass, I knew all the responses. And it was like coming home. Yeah, I've talked to these guys, and the World War II veterans too. Mass on the beaches of Iwo Jima and same Mass on the hood of a Jeep, on a pile of boxes holding ammunition. This is where they had Mass. But the same Tridentine Mass. You see the beauty of the Catholic Church?
It probably helped to keep them very stable and balanced then.
Yeah. And Archbishop Lefebvre says in Africa, the Africans in Gabon and in Senegal, he talks about this in one of his sermons, Jubilee sermons. The whole church sang the Gregorian chant. Everyone chanted the Credo, the Gloria, the Kyrie, and it united all these warring tribes in peace. But he said after the Vatican II Mass and the new Mass came in, they were at war with each other again. We want our language of our tribe. No, we want our language of our tribe. So they were back to fighting, and there was no more unity. So, in the tribes in Africa, they'll cut each other up. They'll massacre each other. It's the Catholic Church that brought peace between them. This is a fact that they never talk about, these depraved liberals.
And a common objection, especially people that are in the Novus Ordo, is that they don't like the Latin Mass because they don't understand anything. They're like, well, I don't really understand it. But that goes right back to the Catholic schools. If they just would have taught kids
That's right.
real Catholicism, they would have learned Latin, and they would have understood it.
That's
And they
right.
wouldn't have that objection by the time they're an adult.
That's right. And even in the United States, in the 40s, 30s, 40s, 50s, most colleges still had classes taught in Latin or Greek, and they had to learn some Hebrew, depending on the university. But Latin was the common denominator between universities. That was the one world language of the Middle Ages, was Latin. St. Thomas Aquinas, the classes by St. Albert the Great were in Latin, not German. St. Albert was from Germany. But here he was teaching in the Sorbonne University in France. He wasn't teaching in French, he was teaching in Latin. So yes, young boys from a young age would be taught Latin. And then taught their faith as well. So you see, it's a stable, healthy, and a true age of enlightenment. The Middle Ages was the real age of enlightenment.
They call them the Dark Ages.
I know. These depraved liberals. They're a bunch of blackguards. Ever heard that word? It's a term used by Father Cummings, the great Father Cummings in Australia, the Redemptorist who kept the fight of tradition. And one modernist priest said to one of the families there, "Oh, why do you go to Mass with that bag of bones?" saying that old forbidden traditional Mass. He's going to die anyway. He's just a bag of bones. And this was a modernist priest saying the new Mass. But the people kept going to Father Cummings because he would drive through on his junky car all across Australia saying Mass. And it turns out the modernist priest died long before Father Cummings. The bag of bones kept saying Mass and kept traveling throughout Australia. And God rest his soul. He was a great champion of tradition. And he invited Archbishop Lefebvre to come to Australia and give confirmations, which he did. And I met some of the families who were there at that event. So pray for Martin Cash. I think he died. He's one of them. Okay, read on. So he's praising the work of the Catholic Church. Read on, Michael. You teach kings.
You teach kings to provide for the peoples. You warn peoples to submit themselves to kings.
Okay, look at that recipe. You teach the kings, provide for the people. So sacrifice yourselves, be fathers to your people. What a great thing for leaders, right? Don't focus on your income and your pension. No, that's not why you're a king or you're a leader. You look after the people. Isn't that wonderful? And then people, don't be boycotting and stirring revolt, but submit to your kings. Submit to them and obey them, because all authority comes from
God.
Go on.
You carefully teach to whom honor, to whom affection, to whom reverence, to whom fear, to whom comfort, to whom advice, to whom encouragement, to whom teaching, to whom reproach, to whom punishment is owed, showing how everything is not owed to all, and charity is owed to all, and injury is owed to none.
Yeah, so that's St. Augustine, De Moribus Ecclesiae Catholicae, the customs of the Catholic Church, chapter 30, number 63. What a wonderful quote. Go on.
And in another place, blaming political philosophers badly understanding these things, quote, "Let they who say that the teaching of Christ is contrary to the Republic give such an army as the teaching of Christ, command soldiers to give such princes, such husbands, such wives, such parents, such children, such lords, such servants, such kings, such judges, and finally, such prayers and collectors of debt itself, as Christian doctrine commanded them to be, and let them dare to say that this is contrary to the Republic. No, indeed, let them not doubt to confess that this great thing, if it is obeyed, is the salvation of the Republic."
Wow, another tremendous quote from St. Augustine. If this great thing, the Catholic Church, is obeyed, it's the salvation of the Republic. That would be the salvation of the U.S. if we went Catholic. And it would save the West. But without Christ the King, there's no saving it. And without the Immaculate Heart of Mary, forget it. Antony.
There was a time when the philosophy of the gospel governed states. In that time, the strength of Christian wisdom and the divine virtue penetrated the laws, the customs, the morals of peoples, and all the orders and reasons of the Republic. Since the religion established by Jesus Christ was established in it, firmly located in a position of dignity in which it was right, by the grace of princes and the legitimate guardianship of its offices, she flourished everywhere. Then the priesthood and the civil rule were happily joined together in harmony and friendly change of duties. The state composed in the same way bore fruit greater than every opinion. The memory of these things is strong, and has been strong due to countless monuments of great deeds, which can be darkened or corrupted by no art of our enemies. Because Christian Europe subdued the barbarian tribes and led them from wildness to gentleness, from superstition to truth. because she, the victor, repulsed the attacks of the Mohammedans, because she retained the primacy of civil worship, and she accustomed herself to be the leader and teacher of every glory of humanity for others, because she bestowed to the people's genuine and versatile freedom.
Okay, so he's talking, no doubt, referring to the great Charles Martel, who drove off and fought the Muslims coming into southern France, and the great Pepin the Great, and then the great Charlemagne, these great Catholic kings who rose up to defend Christendom. And then in Spain, the 740-year Reconquista. Wonderful thing. Wonderful thing. And go on.
Because she established most wisely many things for the comfort of the wretched. Without controversy, she owes great thanks to the religion which she had, the patroness of taking up such things, the helper for completing them. Surely these same good things would have remained if the harmony of both powers had remained, and greater things could be looked for by right, if she was obedient to the authority, magisterium, and council of the church with a greater faith and steadfastness. For that must but be the image of the perpetual law, as Ivo of Chartres wrote to Pascal II, the supreme pontiff, quote, "When the kingdom and the priesthood come together among themselves, the world is well ruled, the church blooms and bears fruit. When indeed they quarrel among themselves, not only do the small things not grow, but even the great things miserably slip away," end quote.
Yes. So he's quoting Ivo of Chartres. So, priests, I think we need to but future priests, I think it's important we also sometimes preach about what would a Catholic state look like. And you have it laid out right here by St. Augustine. And we have all the examples of saints and saintly kings. It's good to talk about that because a lot of Americans, when you say, a Catholic society, that means the church would be running the police force and handcuffing people who didn't go to Sunday Mass and stuff like that. But that's just stupid exaggeration. But a Catholic society would be basically the closest thing to heaven, governed by charity. And think of the COVID period, letting old people die without their family. Many of them died without their family. And priests were blocked. I was blocked out of the hospital several times. And then the children, suffocating them with these stupid masks, which affects the brain. There was a test done with the oxygen, and it depletes the oxygen, and the mask just collects a bunch of bacteria that regurgitates back into the lungs and causes lung disease, lung problems. So it was just and then shooting up these children and everybody with aborted baby cells, which was as one priest put it, like a mock or aping of the mystical body of Christ. See, by the mystical body of Christ, by sanctifying grace in the Catholic faith, we are members of Christ, right? He is the head, we are the members, bone of his bone, flesh of his flesh. Satan can't do that, but he can mock it and ape it by the shots, by having aborted babies, so his satanic ritual, and pumped into everybody's bloodstream. That's what one priest mentioned, and I think there's truth to that. It's not just medical, there's something diabolic about it. Plus the high rate of heavy metals in these things, poisons, it's really criminal. Which in a Catholic state, though Fauci would have been excommunicated for promoting the murder of children and their aborted baby cells in medicine. He would have been excommunicated by the Pope. And these political leaders would have been excommunicated. Many of them. Biden would have been long excommunicated. And once they're excommunicated, you no longer owe allegiance to them. because the Pope steps in, because he has the authority from God. And where's an instance of that?
Pope Innocent III threatening, threatened King John of England and Philip, one of the Philips of France. He threatened both of them.
Oh, Philip the Fair. Is that which the one you're thinking? Yeah, and even more recent, 1500s. Who excommunicated Queen Elizabeth?
Oh, Pius V.
St. Pius V. All right. Anthony, well, I'll take this one. But that destructive and deplorable eagerness for new things which was stirred up in the 14th century, when first it mixed up the Christian religion, soon by a certain natural journey reached to philosophy, and then reached from philosophy to all the orders of the civil community. From this, just as from a font or a fountain, come the repeated and more recent heads of unbridled liberty, without a doubt invented in the greatest disturbances of the last century and placed in our midst. Likewise, the principles and foundations of a new law, which was both heretofore unknown and not only differs from Christian law, but even from more than one part from the natural law. So he's talking about the new ideas, nominalism, and the new ideas of the philosophers of the 16th, 17th, 18th century with their poison philosophy. It is the greatest of these principles that all men are understood to be alike in their kind and nature, and so of course are equal among themselves in the actions of life. So he's saying, yes, it's true, men are equal in some ways by their nature. We're all human nature. Any one of them, any one of whom is therefore of his own right, that he be liable to know in no way to the authority of another, that he may be able to freely think about a matter however he wills and to do what he pleases. The right of ruling others is in no one. In a society informed by these teachings, there is no leadership except the will of the
people,
who, as it is quite unique, it is uniquely in its own power, so also rules itself alone. But it chooses to whom it entrusts itself in such manner, however, that not so much the right of ruling, but the office transfers into them, and it must be exercised in its own name. So here he's hitting, this false equality. Yes, men are equal in some ways, but in many ways they're not. And he talks about all this in another encyclical as well. Top of page 28, the divine mastery lies down in silence.
In another way, either there is no God, or he cares nothing for the society of the human race, where men either individually or in society owe nothing to God, or any leadership can be considered, of which the very cause, strength, and whole authority does not reside in God. In this way, as is seen, the republic is nothing but the mistress and governess of a multitude, and when the people itself speaks to secure the font of all rights and all power in itself, it will follow that the state thinks itself obligated for no reason of duty to God, that it should publicly favor no religion, nor must it seek the one out of many which alone is true, nor to set that one before the many, nor to favor one the most, but to grant equality and right to every type for its end, as long as the discipline of the republic does not take anything of harm from them.
Yeah, so this is what you call religious liberty. He's condemning that. So the idea that the state doesn't profess any religion, doesn't favor any religion, especially the one that's true. So once you let loose all false beliefs, you have chaos. Go on. It will be agreeable
It will be agreeable to entrust to the judgment of each every question of religion. Each will take for himself either to follow that which he prefers, or none whatsoever, if he approves of none. From here, these things have certainly already been born. Judgment is bound by no law of any conscience of anyone whatsoever. Unrestrained opinions about worshipping or not worshipping God, then the infinite license in thinking, then of publishing those thoughts.
Yeah, so this is why the church condemns liberty of the press. Because just look at pornography. That's an example of liberty of the press gone off the rails. Poisoning young children. Poisoning little children. At age 5, 6, 7, they're already into pornography. It's frightening. It's frightening what's happening. It's horrifying. And that's an example. That's why the state should forbid and censure garbage. Pornography and false teachings and false religions should be banned. Right? But liberals have a heart attack when they hear this. But this is the Catholic Church's sound teaching. It is based on right reason and nature. Michael? Okay, we'll pick up next time. Agitorium nostrum in nomine Domini.